This is Duke University.
Thank you all for being here today. My name is Matthew Rascoff. I'm Associate Vice Provost for Digital Education and Innovation. And I'm very excited to share this fantastic panel with you. We've got a wonderful group of colleagues here today. We've got 90 minutes for this discussion. I'm going to have a handful of questions to get things started, but we're also going to have plenty of opportunities for engagement with the group. I'm going to ask our panelists to introduce themselves, and I've got a microphone here, by saying a little bit about who they are and what they do, but also to tell us where they were in the year of the MOOC in 2012, 5 years ago. Because part of what we're doing today is looking back on 5 years of Duke's partnership with Coursera. And I think there's an institutional story to be told, which I think we'll get through many voices on this panel, but there are also some individual stories to be told. So I'm curious about the individual panelists' experience of 2012, what it was like then, and kind of where you are now, and what the connection is between here and there.
Okay, so it says it's on. I don't usually need a microphone. Can you guys hear me okay? Is it working on? Okay. So my name is Jen Chambers. I am the Senior Director of Alumni Education in the Alumni Affairs Office. So my position actually works as an umbrella for all alumni education at the university. So we work with all of the professional graduate schools as well as Trinity and Pratt. In 2012, I'm probably going to be the oddest person up here. I've been at Duke now for 3.5 years. I'm also a graduate student here. But in 2012, I was running an antique shop and tea room in Tupelo, Mississippi, which, if you don't know, is the birthplace of Elvis. And did that for about 18 months for some family, to cover some family friends and my mom's job. So that's where I was in 2012. I actually did start taking online classes at that point because I had a lot of free time on my hands. So I did sort of try to see what was out there, and it was pretty interesting because there's not a whole lot to do after hours in Tupelo, Mississippi. Did I get all of the
Perfect.
bits in? Okay,
Thank you. And that microphone, I turned up the volume on that, so if you're getting it down, it should.
I'll assume that this is working. My name is Len White, and I am a neuroscientist, and I am appointed in the School of Medicine in the departments of Neurology, and Neurobiology, and Arts and Sciences, and the Department of Psychology and Neuroscience. And in 2012, I had the amazing opportunity to join with many of you who are out there, we know who you are, to create the first round of Coursera MOOCs. And for me, I had been implementing team-based learning as a pedagogical approach to the coursework that I teach in the School of Medicine. And I had all these really lousy videos that were recordings of somebody else's lectures. And when the opportunity to create a MOOC came around, I hardly knew what a MOOC was, but I knew enough to know that I would have some provostial resources and the support of many of you to create better videos. And that was the main hook that got me involved with this. I had no idea that the course was ever going to really come together or work, let alone that I'd be running it for 5 years. But at least I got those good videos out of it, and I continue to use them. So I continue to have my medical students take the MOOC while they take the on-campus course with me.
Hi, I'm Cetinkaya-Rundel. I'm in Statistical Science. I think my story is similar to Len's, where I had been trying to be disciplined about make videos for my on-campus course, and it just resulted in really long Sundays on campus with, you know, mediocre quality videos. And that's one of the things that kind of got me attracted to the idea of a MOOC. But also, I've been kind of active in the open source community for a while, and I believe in open source education. And I think the O in the MOOC, the open part, also was attractive to me. And I thought this is a way to kind of have the reach of this material that I teach to an audience a lot bigger than what's at Duke. Although I think exactly in 2012, I was probably having a phone call with a colleague who teaches the data science from Johns Hopkins, who was telling me, you either develop a thick skin today or get out of this business now. So I don't know, I'm still around, so I guess I have a thick skin.
Hi, and my name is Pedro Lasch, and I teach in the Department of Art, History, and Visual Studies. I'm a visual artist, so a lot of my classes are studio classes, but my advanced seminars are always interdisciplinary, so I work with sociology students, anthropology, and all kinds of other fields. In 2012 was a very strange year for me academically because I took a leave without pay to take care of my now 6-year-old daughter. And so I learned what it meant to cancel every project that you don't absolutely have to do so that I could do that. So I ended up having a professional year where I learned what it meant to just prioritize. You know, so I only kept the 2 most important projects. It was the Leonard in Cuba and Documenta in Germany, 2 very nice exhibitions. Everything else I said no to, and so in terms of the year, I was mostly talking about rubber duckies and all kinds of other things. But in terms of online education, I've always been someone who's committed to the notion of the public intellectual and of universities sharing what we do with a much wider public, like that idea of intellectual service. And I've always been a fan of controversy. So as an artist, you know, a lot of us tend to. So when MOOCs came out, they were immediately controversial, and I thought that was really fascinating. Like all the discussions, while some of them were very black and white, and they were very rich.
Hi everybody, my name is Michael Zychowicz. I'm a professor and director of the master's degree programs over at the School of Nursing. 2012, let's see, I think in 2012 I had finished my first year as a director of the master's programs, and we were starting to engage in conversation about curricular revision and moving to online education for advanced practice nurses, and talking about MOOCs, not really doing much about it, but really talking about it. Yeah, so that's where I was in 2012.
Thank you. I want to start with an article that was published in the Duke Chronicle last week. And it was a fairly skeptical, fairly kind of critical view of the MOOC movement. The piece was called Rethinking MOOCs. And there was a line in there that I think caught my eye and the team's eye as well. Beyond publishing their course materials, elite universities have little incentive to invest resources in providing features that improve the quality and credibility of online courses. And it closed this paragraph by saying, while the stated mission of MOOC providers is to equalize education, their bottom line driven partners, meaning Duke and our peer institutions, they're referring here to the 12 original Coursera partners, have no such altruistic motives. To me, this seemed a little bit backwards, honestly, as kind of representing Duke and working with these platform providers who seem very commercial in their motives. But to me, it sort of spoke a little bit of the come down from the euphoria of the 2012 moment and what's happened since then. I see a lot of opportunity that we have found in bringing these ideas into the institution, but I'm interested from your perspective, what has the impact of the MOOC movement and online learning generally been on your experience on campus, and how have you brought it back? I heard Len and Benna say that they actually designed for this up front. In fact, they were thinking about how to serve their campus in the beginning, and this was kind of an instrument for doing that more effectively. That's not usually part of the story. Usually it's that this was kind of an accident that happened after that, an unintended consequence that it impacted my teaching on campus. But if you could sort of reflect for a moment on what has the impact been on your job, your teaching, your students, the way you approach your non-online teaching part of your life. And I'll open it up to anybody on the panel who wants to speak to that.
I don't know that I would call it an accident that it happened that way, that I was thinking about the on-campus course first. I am personally not a huge risk-taker person. Developing a MOOC was going to be an incredible time investment, and there was absolutely no guarantee that the next year this company called Coursera was going to be around. They're a startup after all. So it just seemed like it was, the way to think about it was thinking about it strategically. Well, next year Duke will be here, Stat 101 will be here, so let's make sure that these materials can be used there, but let's see what else can be done with them is how I was thinking about it. And I would say, in addition to providing these videos as an additional component to my course that really helped with the team-based component, which prior to that I was trying to run a team-based course, and for some reason students responded not as positively to having to learn on their own from reading, but videos seemed a bit more attractive to them. I would say it also made me really organized about my course, because, and I don't know how much of this is a MOOC thing versus a Duke CIT thing, but we had to write these learning objectives and organize stuff and whatever. But I think that, you know, that really made me think how can I modularize this course? And I think that really helps student learning, or at least student organization. And students respond positively to organized materials, I would say. But also, in addition, I think that this global reach was something that was always in my mind, and I still to this day will go to conferences international and meet people who say, I started learning art because I took your course. And I think that I don't know, I would disagree with the sentiment that that wasn't part of the initial reason for getting involved with this.
I guess I would say I was somewhat saddened when I read the editorial. I don't necessarily want to engage in a debate about the fundamental theses of the editorial, but it just was not my experience at all. For me, this has been the most rewarding experience I've done in education in my 25 years at Duke. And I think that part of why I would say that is simply the scale. And sometimes I tell my colleagues when a couple of students say something nice to you at the end of a course, it makes you feel good, like you're ready to teach another semester. Do that on scale of a MOOC, and that's a lot of goodness that's coming into your inbox every day. Hardly a day goes by when someone doesn't write to me just to express a word of gratitude. And that's pretty special. You know, when we are confronting resiliency concerns and other challenges that we face as faculty, I think that is part of the untold story of the experience for me as a faculty member. And for me, the principle I've tried to maintain all along is that it has to be for Duke first. So whatever I do with the MOOC has to benefit the teaching that I do on campus. And it's been a real privilege, as Pedro was saying, to be able to share what we do for our internal audience with the rest of the world. And that's been just incredibly enriching to me. So I'm very, very grateful for this opportunity that I've had, and certainly would feel very sad if I lost that opportunity. But it is a dynamic space, and things don't last forever, so I'm enjoying it while it's here.
Yeah, so the Alumni Association programs that we do, we share the programs that are offered through Coursera, but we also do alumni exclusive MOOCs. And we really have a global community. So trying to reach people that live outside of like DC and New York and whatnot, this has become a really big asset in our educational programming to reach folks that live in Bangalore and Hong Kong that we just don't get to that often. So this has been a really great way for them to re-engage with the university. It's been a great way for them to keep up with what types of programs are going on at the university and learn what faculty are doing. We almost always host some type of live engagement when we do these online courses with the faculty members, so they have the chance to call in or write questions in advance and have the faculty member answer them. So it's been a great addition to our opportunities within the alumni community, which is 167,000 strong, and they're global. So we can't get to everybody. So this has been a solution for us.
And what about that question of global impact? And maybe I'll ask Pedro to address this one. Have the MOOCs lived up to the hype that was associated with them in terms of global impact? And your courses seem to really depend in their very design on global engagement and wide community, and they only work at scale, which is kind of unusual for the kind of learning you're doing. But thinking about the past 5 years and what you had hoped initially and what actually came to pass, what is your reflection on the kind of the global reach of learning?
Yeah, I mean, also going back to the idea of the campus and our students, I kind of completely agree. Like everything I design for any of the MOOCs that I've designed, I don't do anything that I don't want to be using in my classroom. You know, so that's kind of a good rule. Like if it's not useful in the classroom, don't do it in the MOOC, right? But with the MOOC, it has an additional advantage of like you being able to work with so many other people. One of the immediate challenges that came up with when I wanted to do MOOCs that were about art was that we didn't want to just make it theory and history. That was a central part of the videos, but we wanted learners to be making their own art projects. And there's these long traditions of thinking, if anything, like there's many things that can be taught online, but art is certainly not one of them. So I talk about controversy, and so I wanted to face that straight on and say, no, in these MOOCs people will be making projects, And so even there it made me a better teacher, because when you only have 12 students, you can be wishy-washy about what you're supposed to do, and even if all 12 students email you with confusion, and existential crises, you can write it back to them. But when you have a MOOC, I learned so much from Justin immediately, like, rubrics, you know, like kind of how to be clear, like everything, and it's actually made me a better teacher in the classroom, you know, so. But in terms of the global scale, you know, of course it's exciting, for me it's so exciting that people in 134 countries are making these weekly art projects and social interventions. But the other part that to me is essential about why it mattered to make MOOCs and why it still matters is that for years, ever since I got to Duke like 15 years ago, I was arguing that the university can be an amazing cultural producer. Like, we shouldn't just be analyzing and reading and discussing. We have amazing resources here to make stuff, to build things, right? And so look, like all the people who are here, I think of us as makers. And it's very different. When people just design a class, they forget that you're building a community, right? In the case of small classrooms, you're building it over the generations, over the years, right? If you add, like each one of our experience, 30 years of teaching also is a MOOC in the sense of massive medium. But with the MOOC, all of a sudden you have this opportunity to make it so clear that we are making something, right? We're media producers, and that to me was very attractive, and it has certainly paid off.
Michael, maybe I could ask you, you know, coming from the world of online degrees and hybrid degrees of, you know, in nursing education, have you seen tie-in between the open courses that Duke has done and the degree-bearing, you know, work? And has there been a cultural influence, focus on instructional design? I hear a couple of the panelists saying that they were introduced to the idea of courses on instructional design through the MOOC movement. What have you seen in terms of the nursing schools and impact there?
I'd like to come back to the global impact of online education. At the School of Nursing, we've actually seen a negative impact with online education, which is kind of contrary to what I would have expected, right? So traditionally, international students want to come and be in residence, but with online education, the Department of Homeland Security says, sorry, you can't come to the US and study on an online program. You have to stay in your home country. So we've actually had to turn folks away who are more than qualified applicants, turn them away because they want to come to the US only. They don't want to stay in South Korea or China or wherever their home country is. They want to come to Durham, North Carolina, to the university to immerse themselves in this cultural environment, in a scholarly environment here. So we've seen that negative impact on a global scale. For those students who say, sure, no problem, I'll stay in South Korea, no worries. Well, we see another layer of issue with this, with our online program. Our students have to come to campus because, gosh, we're a clinical program, and we need to engage in some psychomotor skill building. So the students need to come from South Korea to our School of Nursing 6 times during their course of study. They have to get 6 individual visas each time. There's an expense, a cost, a burden for students who want and need to come. It's a burden for the school and for the visa office that we've got to ensure that we're checking on them. Every time they come here, they need to check in. So there's an additional layer of difficulty. And then the additional part of this, the third component, is they have to engage in clinical education. They have to work in somewhat of an apprenticeship model, working with a licensed clinician in their home country. And gosh, what is the quality of the medical care that's in that country, in that village in South Africa or somewhere in Kenya? What's the quality of care there? Are we able to have them get a clinical experience that would be on the level of what our students would get here in the States? I don't know. And then if we have an accreditation requirement that if we have a student performing a clinical rotation with a preceptor, physician or otherwise, we need to send a faculty member to evaluate them to that clinical site. So that's an additional fiscal burden that I've got in the School of Nursing to send a faculty member to South Korea, to Kenya, to wherever they might be. So there's so many additional layers with nursing education that are a tremendous burden and really are barriers to getting in the way of producing online education for nurse practitioner students. And you know, I've been thinking about writing an article saying that basically that online education is going to be the depth of the international student in the U.S. because of these types of things.
It's interesting. Most of the issues you're talking about are really regulatory issues. They're not educational issues.
Correct.
It's about the OPT visa status and basically the way the government handles these students, not the way the institution considers them.
That's absolutely right.
Learning
Things that are out of our control.
Yeah. So I'm interested in asking the panel about how we can learn the lessons of the past 5 years for the benefit of our strategy in the next 5 years. Some of you may know, we're undertaking this strategic shift. Our team has a new name of Learning Innovation that's supporting deeper investments in new credentials, in thinking about how we can serve Duke schools and Duke students more effectively. So one very particular question I have, especially for the faculty members on the panel, is how can we engage your colleagues more effectively? I think round one in the first 5 years found the early adopters, the lead innovators, and that's you on this panel. What will it take to get to that next level of the mainstream faculty who are interested, I think, Len, in hearing from thousands of students that kind of gratitude, but how do we kind of get them from here to there? What are the resources that they need? How should we rethink the services and support that we offer to go from the early adopters into the mainstream? Go ahead.
Yeah, just a couple quick thoughts. I mean, first, continue to showcase the work that good folks are doing at any of the venues that we have available. We've got many venues available. But I think there's individual institutional buy-in, right? You think about some of the things that were said in this article about no such altruistic motives. Well, yep, these institutions are businesses, and I'm trying to understand from the administrator's perspective that yes, this is a business and these might not make a ton of money on tuition, but what is the value add to the institution? That's got to be a clear sell. More than just democratizing education. What's the value add from the business end of this? Just quick.
That line for me really didn't resonate because I look at the motivations of folks like you and my staff, and I think it's very much about the double bottom line. That's kind of how we think about our projects. Obviously, we need to do projects that are financially sustainable so we can keep investing and doing more of them over time. But we can't just do that. Of course, we're serving the mission of the institution. Of course, it's a noble mission. And those two sometimes coexist, and that's an ideal project for us. But we need to think about a portfolio of projects that include both of those categories as criteria, as decision-making criteria. So it doesn't seem to be quite as simple as like altruism versus financially driven decision-making. I think the double bottom line kind of message is how I think about how to allocate resources. Maybe I don't know if that's the issue with engaging faculty, and that is it certainly seems to be something that distinguishes the early adopters who very much seem to be altruists. But maybe we need to get beyond that if we want to go into the mainstream. What's your view, Pedro?
Yeah, I mean, I think from the very beginning, in my view, MOOCs were misnamed. Not misnamed that sort of many MOOCs function as open online courses that are massive. But I think many of us were trying to do a million other things with our MOOCs that do not get captured by that notion, right? And so with that name that was chosen, which I don't think we should change at this point, we should just call them MOOCs, that people will forget what that stands for. Like I've often thought of it as a massive open online conference, for example. For me, it's okay if people just grab, like if you go to a conference, you don't apologize, oh, I didn't get to finish the conference, I only went to that one panel, And so I think many of us design that you grab what is good for you, and that's totally fine, But if it's a course, then it is. Same with the completion rates. If it's a course, it's a failure if only 30% or even fewer complete. But in a conference, it's a huge accomplishment if 20,000 people or 250,000 people show up. So I think we have to unpack what we've all been trying to do with this idea of MOOC and see where actually we may depart from the MOOC model and simply use those experiments to be more straightforward about it, And in terms of our colleagues, I feel like first of all, I don't think universities, even if they're private, are not businesses. We're nonprofits, and I think that's really important to remind people about, Like there's business logic within it, and the more we see our institutions function as pure for-profit businesses, that should be cause for alarm in general, not just when it comes to MOOCs and things, right? I also think we have to compare the cost of these things to other things that the university does all the time. Like I've seen, you know, $20,000 spent on like a conference that is attended by 20 people, you know? And so I think we need to compare what may seem like shocking costs for some things. We need to actually be comparing it with how the university is spending resources otherwise. But in terms of connecting with colleagues, if we only think of it as a broadcasting medium, sure, we could question a lot of the use of the resources. Because that's kind of the kind of public, the sharing of knowledge. But I think a lot of our colleagues actually, this is a great research tool. Not for me as an artist, one of the main motivators to do this was as an art project, to see how can you do a public art project that is happening simultaneously around the world, and I couldn't think of a better medium than the Coursera platform. For a sociologist, using these platforms to study collectively sociological phenomena and use the data that is generated by the behavior actually could be amazing. So I could imagine attracting a researcher just from the standpoint of research, because institutions like Duke like to pride themselves in the idea of a research institution. To use these platforms, whether they're MOOCs or not, the online platforms as a research tool. You know?
I have some ideas, but no concrete suggestions. If I had real ideas, I would have said them to somebody by now, I'm sure. I think that in terms of engaging other people, so we said 2012 was the year of the MOOC, that's 5 years ago. I feel like anybody who was super thrilled about making videos made them already. So I don't know what the next thing is, but I feel like there's got to be something out there, and I think a new crop of faculty are going to get super excited about it. Maybe some of us will overlap with them, maybe not, but my guess is it'll be something else, hopefully.
A technological thing, or what
yeah, I don't know. I think that's the million-dollar question. I think maybe some technological thing, but I just feel like, you know, videos are good, but it was new a while back, but they're not really new anymore. So I don't know what the next new thing will be. In my domain, there's some stuff, for example, but I don't know how it translates to others. Like, there's more of this like online interactive exercise type stuff where students, more about instant feedback as opposed to watching something, which obviously Coursera has some of this built in, for example, with those questions and whatnot, but really taking it to the next step where user input is parsed on the back end and like some feedback is given to students. That seems to, in my domain, be very exciting currently, but I don't know what like a wider appeal version of that is. I think the other thing, and I know this is a hard thing, and I think a lot of the people in this room keep saying, well, that's above my pay grade, but somebody has to recognize that these take an incredible time investment, and a lot of especially junior faculty who might be super excited about having this kind of reach are advised over and over by their more senior mentors that this is not how you're going to get evaluated. That's an insane move to right now, like in your second year as a tenure track professor, to be creating something like this. I'll say that I think I'm a professor of the practice here. I'm not tenure eligible. My department was very much like supportive of me working on this because it worked well with the other things I was going to get evaluated on. Highly doubt that would have been the case if I was a tenure track professor. So if we're looking for innovation on the education end, that needs to be rewarded properly for people in all tracks of the university. And if we keep passing the buck saying that's above my pay grade, those people are never going to be encouraged to do it.